Many, many miles east of nowhere lies the amazing land of Oz, a magnificent empire created in the mind of a man who wrote a great book about it. Like wildfire in the wheat field, the fabulous tale of the Wizard of Oz spread from town to city, to nation, to the entire world.
The Wizard of Oz. More people have seen it than any other movie, over 1 billion of them. It's probably the most beloved movie ever made in any language.
Vamos, vengan a pelear. ¿Quién será el primero? Pelearé con los dos si quieren.
Oiga, váyase y déjenos en paz.
Asustado, ¿eh? ¿Tienes miedo? No estarás a gusto metido en esa lata.
Oh, des lions, des tigres et des panthères. Oh mon Dieu, des lions, des tigres et des panthères. Oh mon Dieu, des lions, des tigres et des panthères. Oh mon Dieu, des lions, des tigres et des panthères. Oh mon Dieu.
Ich warte meine Zeit ab. Und das merkt ihr, mein feines Kind. Es ist wahr, ich kann leider hier nicht auf dich lauern. Aber hüte dich, kreuze nie meinen Weg. Wenn du es wagst, dann gehörst du mir, mein kleines Schätzchen, und dein Hund auch.
A film historian has noted that the enduring magic of The Wizard of Oz touches not only our children, but the child in all of us. The enchantment is easy to explain. The movie's sentiments are universal. Its timelessness, that of any great classic. Those who created this work came as near to perfection as anyone could ask. I first saw The Wizard of Oz as a schoolgirl in London, and I thought it was unlike anything that I'd ever seen before. It was so innovative and such great fun. Later, when I began to watch it on television with my children and then my grandchildren, with each viewing, I realized that indeed this is a very special motion picture. A movie filled with values that we all cherish. A movie for all of us, for all time. This is part of a missing number from The Wizard of Oz. Why it is missing will be explained as we share the reminiscences of many who were part of the fascinating history of Oz. Backstage, there was confusion, chaos, and often danger. Now, for the first time, you're going to learn this remarkable story told by those who participated in the making of a movie classic.
They didn't want to do that, believe me, to spend that much money, because there was a lot of money in those days, $2.6 million, a lot of money. They almost fired me for spending so much money.
We finally took some of the makeup off. They took some of the makeup off, and we went to the commissary. And it was such a frightening thing to see for other people, because what we looked like were people from another world, with those weird kind of faces that we had, and they just kicked us out of the commissary and made us eat in the dressing room.
People question me like you're questioning me now, and say it must have been fun making that picture. It was not fun like hell. It was fun. It was a lot of hard work. It was not fun at all. There's nothing funny about it.
I had to work with 3 very professional men, you know, Jack Haley and Burt Lauer and Ray Bolger. And they had so much makeup on. And they were so busy complaining about their makeups. And each one was making bets as to which makeup was the most difficult all the way through the picture.
I thought that she was the most adorable creature that was ever put on this earth. And so right for the part of Dorothy. She was just like a little girl from Kansas. With great big eyes. She wasn't pretty, just plump, but in a way she was beautiful.
I'm frightened, Annie, I'm frightened.
I think she holds the whole picture together. Her sincerity that she wants to get back to Kansas. You believe her. She wants to get home to her Aunt Em and so forth. And that was the whole hub of the picture. But it's a wonderful picture, and we're part of it.
The one thing that we will be known for, no matter what we've done anyplace else in the whole world, will be The Wizard of Oz. Well, we don't get any residuals, but we have a better thing than residuals. We have a kind of immortality. And a great pride for being a part of a great American classic.
You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. You'll find he is a wizard, a whiz, if ever a whiz there was. If ever, oh, ever a whiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. You're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
In the summer of 1989, there is an extraordinary outpouring of affection as all across America fans celebrate the 50th birthday of the Wizard of Oz. From California to Kansas, from New York to Florida, a timeless movie continues to enchant generation after generation. On a drizzly Sunday morning in August, Midtown Manhattan comes to a halt as the most spectacular Oz event of the year takes place. This happening will find its way into the Guinness Book of World Records, with nearly 5,000 excited participants tap dancing down 34th Street. After weeks of rehearsal, the youngsters give it their all, knowing they'll be seen on TV, even if it's just for a fleeting moment.
Wizard of Oz on tape. We taped it, and me and my sister watch it at least every day.
We've all heard about the several pairs of ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland and how much they've been auctioned for. Anywhere from $15,000 to $165,000. Well, you can forget about those. These ruby slippers, created by the house of Harry Winston for the Oz anniversary, are valued at $3 million because they are made of real rubies. How the Wizard of Oz became a national heritage is a really fascinating story. It all began in 1900 when L. Frank Baum published his classic children's book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Nearly 40 years later, the man indirectly responsible for bringing Oz to the screen was none other than Walt Disney. His Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is not only 1938's biggest hit, it is the most successful movie ever made to that date. This fact does not go unnoticed by other movie moguls, especially Louis B. Mayer, the highest paid executive in America. He reigns supreme at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, a studio that boasts it has more stars than there are in the heavens. When it's suggested that MGM acquire the rights to The Wizard of Oz, Mayer is interested, but he has a problem. His brilliant head of production, Irving Thalberg, has passed away over a year ago. Mayer has been desperately searching for a successor and finally finds him. Mervyn LeRoy, a bright 38-year-old producer-director, seems the perfect choice. LeRoy accepts, and coincidentally, one of the first projects he proposes is Oz.
Well, I always wanted to make The Wizard of Oz since I was a little boy. Mr. Mayer called me in and said, look, why don't you just produce this picture? You're so crazy about it. And I said, but LB, I want to direct this picture too. He said, well, I think it's too big for you to do both. But I produced it and I'm very proud of it.
To produce a motion picture this complex, LeRoy definitely needs help. He takes on songwriter Arthur Freed as an uncredited associate. Years later, as a producer, Freed's name would become synonymous with the golden years of the MGM musicals. But at this moment, his biggest job is to help LeRoy cast the picture. She has been the biggest star in the world for the past 4 years, and many think Shirley Temple is the natural choice to play the role of Dorothy. LeRoy is under pressure to cast her. However, after hearing Shirley sing at an unofficial audition, LeRoy and Freed decide the demands of the part are beyond the talents of even this amazing 10-year-old. Still, on the off chance that things might change, Shirley seems prepared.
I had a very good time in Bermuda with the horse and buggy, but I'm glad to be home. Because after all, there's no place like home.
From the age of 2.5, when young Judy Garland began her vaudeville career as part of the Gum Sisters Kiddie Act, she had been billed as the little girl with the great big voice.
In my singing school, I am one of
By the time she is 15 years old, her name has been changed from Frances Gum to Judy Garland. And she has been under contract to MGM for almost 3 years. She can sing and dance, she can play drama or comedy. Anyone in Hollywood who has seen her perform at benefits or private parties knows Judy Garland is destined for stardom. Leroy and Freed convinced Maya that Oz could be her breakthrough. Judy must lose some weight, but the part of Dorothy is hers.
When Mama spoke about making The Wizard of Oz, I could always tell what respect she had for the movie and how proud she was to have been a part of it.
Whenever she watched the movie, you could see in her eyes that she loved making that film because she was a kid. She was 16 years old. She had a great time making that movie, and it was a happy time.
At 22, she was the toast of Broadway. At 29, Billie Burke married Florence Ziegfeld, living a life of luxury worthy of a fairy tale princess. Then in her 50s, Billie Burke begins a successful Hollywood career playing rich, feather-brained matrons. Oz is Burke's favorite movie. As close as I have come, she says, to the kind of roles I did in the theater.
I'm Glinda, the Witch of the North.
You are? Oh, I beg your pardon, but I've never heard of a beautiful witch before.
Only bad witches are ugly.
The casting for The Wicked Witch causes a major controversy and has everyone at MGM going in circles. Frank Baum's concept in the original book, as illustrated by W.W. Denslow, isn't much help. But Mervyn LeRoy has an idea. Since Disney's glamorous Wicked Queen in Snow White is so successful, why not make the Wicked Witch slinky and seductive? Freed and other executives protest. LeRoy's mind is made up. On the MGM lot is Gail Sundergaard, who the year before had won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in Anthony Adverse, a film directed by Mervyn LeRoy. LeRoy persuades Sundergaard to test for the role. Decked out in stylish black sequins with a form-fitting wardrobe to match, she is a knockout. Freed and the others are exasperated. Bad witches are ugly, they remind LeRoy, like Disney's old crone in Snow White. So LeRoy orders the makeup department to give Sundergaard the ugly treatment. But her striking features defy the grease paint, and the distinguished actress decides she doesn't want the role. In those days, I was not about to make myself ugly, she says. I have no regrets. Absolutely no regrets.
Then you take it and bring it up to your kisser and inhale.
A former kindergarten teacher, Margaret Hamilton, is 36 years old and newly divorced. She has been supporting herself and her 3-year-old son as a hard-working character actress.
Chicken thieves, eh?
Why, we'll gladly pay you for any damage that we've done.
All right, $3.
So I'd done about 6 pictures for MGM by that time. And one day my agent called and said, Maggie, he said, they're really kind of interested in you. And I said, what for? He said, they're sort of interested in you for a part in The Wizard of Oz. And I said, oh, gosh, think of that. I said, I loved that story from the time I was 4 years old. What is it? And he said, well, the witch. And I said, the witch? And then he said the final thing. He said, yes, what else?
The title role of the wizard encourages many diverse contenders. Ed Wynn, a popular radio comedian who concludes the part is too small. Wallace Beery, one of MGM's most popular stars, wants the role badly, but the studio refuses to spare him during the long Oz schedule. And W.C. Fields. Everyone at MGM is impressed by his recent triumph in David Copperfield, but Fields haggles endlessly over his salary and time runs out. One of MGM's most durable character actors, 48-year-old Frank Morgan, finally wins the role, or rather 5 of them. He is delightfully versatile as the wizard, Professor Marvel, the doorman, the cabbie, and the guard.
This is the last straw.
Everyone's favorite choice to play the Cowardly Lion is Burt Lahr, Broadway's leading clown, known for his explosive comedy style.
$3,000? We're rich, we're rich, we're rich! Happy times, boy, happy times, boy. You brought us luck, you brought us luck. Take him away, take him away!
He was a very raucous, loud, energetic, low comic. And really, the only way he could make it in Hollywood, given that energy, was as an animal. Because as a real person, blown up 8 times larger than life, that energy was kind of oppressive to the paying customer. But as an animal, it was perfectly acceptable.
Shame on you!
What did you do that for? I didn't buy them.
No, but you tried to.
He had been a bank clerk, a vacuum cleaner salesman, and an accountant. Not the usual background for an acclaimed Broadway star. Now under contract to MGM, Ray Bolger is thrilled to learn he will be in Oz, until he finds out that he is to play the Tin Man.
I was angry. I was really upset. I loved the thought of being the Scarecrow. And I could not imagine anybody else playing the part. And I could do all the kinds of steps that I wanted to do, and there was something else. I don't know, I had a feeling if I could play this part, it would make a star out of me. And then I got my wife and I went up to Mr. Mayor's office, and we fought and fought and fought, and I finally won out.
This extraordinary dance routine, directed by the inventive Busby Berkeley, makes brilliant use of Ray Bolger's unique style. Unfortunately, at the last moment, fearing the picture is running too long, the studio decides to cut the number. Recently discovered in the MGM vaults, it raises the question, how long is too long?
Gosh, it would be awful pleasing to reason out the reason for things I can't explain. Then perhaps I'll deserve you and be even worthy of you if I only had a brain.
Judy Garland dances with another veteran of the theater, 30-year-old Buddy Ebsen. He has been under contract to MGM for 4 years and doesn't mind at all when he is switched from the Scarecrow to the Tin Man. But his dream assignment turns into a nightmare. They put aluminum dust all over my makeup, recalls Ebsen, and this aluminum dust got into the air and pretty soon my lungs were coated with it. One night I took a breath and nothing happened. They got an ambulance for me and got me down to the hospital. While Ebsen begins months of recuperation from his near-fatal illness, MGM announces he will be replaced with no further explanation. Ebsen considers this as the worst personal and professional disaster he ever endured. Ebsen's replacement is Broadway and movie star Jack Haley. On loan from 20th Century Fox, he knows nothing of Ebsen's calamity, but Haley's makeup has been quietly changed from aluminum powder to aluminum paste. When Haley reports to MGM, he encounters a concerned director, Victor Fleming.
The first day shooting, we had a little talk. He said, Jack, have you thought about how you're going to approach this? I said, sure. He said, how? I said, well, I have a son, 4 or 5 years old. And when I go home at night, he insists that I come up and tell him a story. My thinking is to have that same approach in the character. He said, well, give me an example. Well, a long time ago, I was standing here and it started to rain. That's it. That's it. And it was the right way to do it. But he knew it right away when he heard it. He knew that was what he wanted.
Camera's ready. Sound is ready. Places, everybody.
Quiet, please.
All right, Bill, turn him over. Speed.
Playback.
1, 2, 3.
We're out to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. Here he is, a wizard of a whiz, if ever a whiz there was.
After weeks of uncertainty, cameras start to turn. But the troubles of Oz have only just begun.
The wonderful things he does.
The man who invented Oz, with all its colorful characters, has a life story almost as improbable as his creations. In 1856, Lyman Frank Baum is born to a wealthy family in upstate New York. But once on his own, success seems to elude him. He fails as a store manager, reporter, and traveling salesman. In 1898, his mother-in-law inspires him to write a children's story based on the fantastic tales he constantly invents to entertain his 4 sons and their friends. But first, Baum needs a title.
One day, he was sitting at his desk and looking at his filing cabinet, and the first drawer was A to N, and the second drawer was O to Z, which would be Oz. But that would be an excellent title for the imaginary land.
Oz becomes a publishing sensation with the first 14 volumes written by Baum. The successful author moves to Hollywood, where he writes, produces, and directs several Oz silent films, but typically his company loses money. Baum remains in Hollywood, turning out a new Oz book every year. His favorite pastime is puttering in his garden under the warm California sun. When L. Frank Baum dies in 1919 at the age of 62, a critic writes, "The children of the world have lost their dearest friend." This is a first edition of L. Frank Baum's original Oz adventure. It's over 90 years old now, but the story's as fresh, lively, and imaginative as the day it was written. By 1938, over 10 million Oz books had been sold, captivating 4 generations of children. At MGM, the question was how to bring this classic to the screen without destroying its magical qualities. Well, it finally required the combined efforts of 14 writers and 5 directors to capture Baum's vision on film. The screenplay is credited to 3 writers, Florence Ryerson, Edgar Allan Wolfe, and a young man who deserves most of the praise. 26-year-old Noel Langley contributes key elements to the script. He changes Dorothy's shoes from silver to ruby. He establishes the fantasy characters as hired hands on the Kansas farm, and he inspires Dorothy to realize there's no place like home. 2 young men from Broadway are assigned to write the songs for Oz. Harold Arlen will compose the music. E.Y. Yip Harburg will create the lyrics and make important contributions to the script and casting of the film. Harold Arlen recalls the birth of the most popular song from their score.
We had finished most of the songs, or all of the songs, but the one for Judy in Kansas. And I knew what I wanted, but when it doesn't come, it becomes one of those things that bugs you. And most of us don't like to be bugged. I said to myself, let's go to Grauman's Chinese. And I said, you drive the car. I don't feel too well right now. I wasn't thinking of work. And as we drove by Schwab's drugstore, I said, pull over. And we stopped. And I took out my little piece of manuscript and put down what you know now as Over the Rainbow. Of course, it needed Mr. Harburg's lyric.
An arid, colorless place. Almost no flowers there because it's so dry. The only thing in her life that was colorful at that point was, I thought, the rainbow. It was the only thing of color that she had ever seen. So I said, I must have a song with rainbow in it.
She didn't sit there and say, all right, watch this. I'm going to really blow you away with this. This was just a song in a film, and her performance is the reason. It's the most perfect marriage of a song and an artist that's ever been.
When Mama sang Over the Rainbow, she believed in the sentiment of the song with all of her heart. That's why whenever you hear the song, even today, you think of her. It was that personal.
If happy little bluebirds fly.
It sounds inconceivable, but Over the Rainbow is cut from the film after the second preview. It slows down the picture, some executives complain, and they consider it undignified for an MGM star to sing in a barnyard. But good sense finally prevails, and the song is restored. While the movie shuts down to recast Buddy Ebsen's part, Mervyn LeRoy studies the results of the first 2 weeks of shooting. LeRoy feels that director Richard Thorpe's footage lacks the childlike quality the film needs, and Thorpe is reassigned. Director George Cukor has a few days open before starting Gone with the Wind and agrees to help out. He too is appalled at what he sees. He begins altering makeup and costumes for many of the principals. Cukor particularly dislikes Judy Garland's appearance. He takes off her curly blonde wig and half of her makeup. And, he recalls, I told her to remember that she's just a little girl from Kansas. George Cukor departs, never realizing how valuable his unsung efforts will be to the final film. And now LeRoy makes a surprising decision. He chooses Victor Fleming to take over. Now, Fleming is a tough-talking, no-nonsense director who goes biking and big game hunting with his buddy, Clark Gable. Despite this macho image, Fleming finds the project irresistible. I made the film, he says, because I wanted my two little girls to see a picture that searched for beauty and decency and sweetness and love in the world. Fleming works tirelessly on this difficult project. Then only a few weeks before completion, he is abruptly summoned to the Selznick Studios. There is trouble in Tara. On the Gone with the Wind set, Clark Gable and George Cukor are barely speaking. Gable threatens to quit unless producer David O. Selznick borrows his pal Victor Fleming. Selznick gets MGM to agree. Cukor is out and Fleming is in. King Vito, one of Hollywood's finest filmmakers, will provide the finishing touches on Oz.
Sometimes we'd being in the studio and knowing the director, and the studio would ask you to take over. And so then they said, well, would you take over Wizard of Oz? I said I would, and I went over, and Victor Fleming was a good friend and took me around all the sets and went through the thing. And one day he left, and I took over. It was about, as I remember, it was about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks possibly, which included Somewhere Over the Rainbow. But I did not want any credit, and as long as Victor was alive, I even kept quiet about it.
Another element of Oz falls into place when over 100 little people march into MGM, the first and last time that such a unique gathering would take place. They are billed as the Singer Midgets, but many are freelancers from vaudeville and circuses all over the world. Only a few are rowdy, most are enthusiastic, and studio workers will never forget them. Munchkin memories are very special. The young man in the middle is Jerry Marin.
We represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, and in the name of the Lollipop Guild.
We wish to welcome you to Munchkin Land. And that's when I handed Judy Garland the lollipop. I was 17, and prior to this, I'd never seen a little man or person in my life, or a little woman. And I was all excited because I heard there were going to be quite a few little men and women. And we got on the bus where I seen all of them. I said, oh, I was so excited. Little guys just like me. And I watch how they walk and I watch how they talk. And it was exciting. I said, my goodness, here I am in Hollywood for the first time in pictures and with the biggest studio.
As coroner, I must...
Well, when we met the casting director, he took a look at us and he picked about 8 of us to say the lines of the Munchkin coroner. I probably enunciated a little bit more distinctly or more emphatically than some of the others. So he says, okay, you're the coroner. And then, of course, Adrian, the gentleman who is in charge of costumes, measured every single Munchkin and designed an individual costume for each person, so that it took the costume department about 5 weeks to make up all these costumes, during which time we were rehearsing. So as soon as the costumes were ready, we were ready to start shooting. Jack Dawn took each one of us and said, well, now what is your part? What are your lines? And then he would put on a makeup for us. And then as soon as he was finished with us, they would take a still shot, and that was put in the files. And then each other Munchkin who had a speaking part was likewise done a master of makeup by Jack Dawn and put in the file, so that when we were ready to shoot, all they had to do was take that picture out of the file, and one of the assistant makeup men would put on the same whiskers and beard, so that we would have the same appearance every day that we were on the set.
He's known as Leo the Lion's best friend. A. Arnold Gillespie, everyone calls him Buddy, is Hollywood's dean of special effects. And Oz presents him with his greatest challenge. Buddy Gillespie must create a dazzling array of special effects, many of them never before attempted. A floating farmhouse and a floating head. A melting witch and flying monkeys. Fireballs, talking trees, and a terrifying tornado. Ever wonder how this special effect was accomplished? Gillespie drops a miniature farmhouse from the top of a soundstage. He shoots it in slow motion and later will reverse the film so the farmhouse appears to be falling into the camera. The floor of the soundstage is painted to look like a Kansas sky with some dry ice vapor for clouds. The most astonishing illusions often have the simplest explanations. Buddy Gillespie reveals his solution to a spectacular effect no one has ever tackled before.
The Wizard of Oz, of course, presented a lot of very, very interesting problems, and the tornado was one of the toughest, naturally, that we had faced. We didn't quite know what to do. But anyway, the tornado was finally resolved by building a funnel type of thing out of muslin, and we put the top part of the thing on a gantry that moved the full length of the stage. And the lower part of the tornado went into a slope in the floor with an S sort of a path, and it progressed towards the camera with a dustpan with Fuller's Earth, which gave the cloud of dust at the bottom, and the tornado was about 30 some odd feet in length.
From one standpoint of the work was that the hours were long and the time off from work was short. During this period, we had to have our dinner, sleep, and get back up again at 5 o'clock in the morning. We hardly ever arrived home earlier than 7:30 or 8. So you see what a short time we had. There's no recreation, none whatsoever. Judy, of course, being a girl, but she had to have her hair done every morning. She had to have it exactly the same way it was the day before.
Composer Harold Arlen's home movies provide the only backstage glimpse of the stars of Oz, all of whom managed to keep their spirits up despite long hours, intense heat, and uncomfortable wardrobe and makeup.
A lot of people ask me about the costumes. I had a rubber mask. The only unfortunate thing about it was that it sort of closed the pores in my face. And when the lights got real hot and they ate up all the oxygen, I couldn't breathe. But worst of all was Bert Lahr. His costume was 90 pounds. What a perfectly ridiculous kind of costume to put on a fellow like Bert Lahr, because Bert Lahr was a nervous type. Bert Lahr, he was always undoing the buttons. He always had gas on his stomach. He couldn't eat anything. And in his costume, it was literally true. He couldn't eat anything.
Jack Haley recalls his miseries.
I was doing a radio show. I had my own radio show. and staying up late with the writers. So I had to be on what they call a reclining board. And I would go to sleep as soon as I got on the reclining board. And Bert said, that Haley can sleep on a beat hook.
In a film that is breaking new ground, there are all sorts of unexpected accidents and injuries. For Margaret Hamilton, Oz is a frightening experience that she will always remember.
It was the end of my first scene of the picture. And she whirls around and stands on this little elevator that went down slowly or went down fast. In this case, it dropped out from under me. It left my feet and I followed it. And it went just like clockwork, and that's the one you see. The first one we did. Then we came back from lunch, and everybody again is tired. It was all just one mistake after another. And I stepped down, the smoke all came up, and I went down. I felt just something warmth on my face. And then there were some dropping things burning, and I thought, what in the world is that? I had a wonderful young man, Jack Young, who really saved my life. He was right there and grabbed a hold of me, and we ran to the first aid station on the set, and where he began working on my face to get the makeup off. We didn't know this until really the next day, but I had a 2nd degree on my face and 3rd on my hand. After he got the makeup off, which was very traumatic for me because it hurt so much. I was just, you sort of tremble. You just can't help it. I was just shaking with it. And finally he got through, and he just said, oh, I know it's been awful, honey. He just said, but I'll tell you about it. Right now I want you to know that there's copper in that makeup, and if I didn't get that off, it would have gone on eating into your face.
The house began to pitch, their attention took a switch.
The legends of Munchkin mischief begin almost immediately. Most stories are greatly exaggerated. Some are true. An eyewitness is 31-year-old MGM contract player Robert Young.
What's kind of interesting when I look back now, I always thought of a major lot as like a small town. And these Munchkins, they were all over the place. And so many of them, I lost track, I don't know, 100 or something like that. And wonderful little people, I just loved them, adored every one of them. But they were all over the place, and they were hiding under benches, and they come out of the bushes, and they were climbing upstairs and falling downstairs, because as soon as the director said cut, they went.
When we were doing the picture, they tried to restrict us because, don't forget, you got about 125 midgets, and they were all curious. And there were 2 brothers. They were a little bit drunky, but not on the set, though, believe it or not. There was one other little gentleman. He drank quite a bit, but he was very quiet. He was the perfect image of a midget, Hamburg hat, the little cane. I mean, he was cute as a bug's ear. But boy, could he drink. No, they didn't have much time. We worked 6 days a week, from 5 in the morning till about 6 in the evening. The only day they had off was Sunday. So it was 90% fabrication. It makes for good copy, I guess.
Judy Garland's children, Liza Minnelli and Joey and Lorna Luft, have personal insights into the Munchkin adventures. The stories proliferate with their mother's occasional appearances on the Jack Parr TV show.
Oh, I see. Well, what about the Munchkins?
Yeah, how about the what?
The Munchkins. Munchkins. What? Yeah. Were they little kids or were they little men?
Drunks.
They were little drunks? What they, you got me stuttering. What did they do? What did they do?
What did they do? Well, one of them, who was about 40, a gentleman asked me for dinner, and I couldn't say, I don't want to go out. I can't because you're a midget. I just said, no, my mother wouldn't like it. And come on, bring your ma, too,
How big was he?
About 2 inches high.
Our mother had an amazing sense of humor, and anybody who really knew her knew what a funny, bright, witty raconteur she was, and her vocabulary was immense. And she had a way of telling a story. She could change anything. So anything that she talked about would become an epic joke, almost. And we used to love to listen to her. And she did that several times, telling stories about the Wizard of Oz. And they have since passed into myth. I mean, people believe a lot of the things that she has told, which in fact we know are not true.
Whenever we do that little dance, up the yellow brick road.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was supposed to be with them.
Yeah.
You know.
They'd crowd you out.
They'd shut me out. They'd close in the three of them, and I would be in back of them dancing. I wasn't good enough, you know, to say, wait a minute. And so the director, Victor Fleming, was a darling man. He was always up on a boom. Would say, hold it, you three dirty hands, let that little girl in there.
Another tall tale by Judy Garland. New Year's Day, 1939. The Wizard of Oz still has 3 more months of shooting, but the MGM publicity department is wasting no time. An elaborate float makes a grand appearance in the Tournament of Roses parade, and thousands of children get an eye-popping look at their Oz fantasy characters come to life. Judy Garland endures an endless barrage of interviews, radio shows, and silly newsreel appearances.
It's a double privilege, Selma and Jeanette, to be able to congratulate you on being elected co-presidents of the Twins Club of Greater New York.
Thank you, Judy.
Get on your mark. Get set. Go.
Even Judy Garland's 17th birthday party becomes a public event. She and Mickey Rooney are the newest rage among teenage moviegoers, and their boss, Louis B. Mayer, is well aware of it. The studio sends Judy and Mickey to New York to open the film. As innocent commuters scramble for their trains, Grand Central Station becomes a madhouse. The much-publicized arrival causes a near riot. 10,000 screaming fans are held back by an emergency squad of 250 patrolmen and 25 detectives hastily summoned to maintain order. But despite the heat and the bedlam, Mickey and Judy survive. When the Capitol Theater opens its doors, over 15,000 people are in line, circling the entire block. After each screening of Oz, Mickey and Judy perform a specially prepared musical comedy act. Garland and Rooney and Oz break all attendance records in one of the most successful launchings of a film in history. Wherever they appear, New York audiences go wild. One reporter says, "These kids are the biggest news since Lindbergh came home." At the New York World's Fair, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia gives Mickey and Judy a guided tour.
Mr. Mayor, that looks like we're going to move in. You bet a lot. You move in, you tell the kids, hey, what do you think of this fair? Isn't it great? It's really wonderful. Isn't it fine?
This would be the last summer of peace before World War II begins. For millions. For years, it's the end of the yellow brick road. No more rainbows. In 1939, 85 million Americans go to the movies at least once a week. Now that's an incredible 65% of the population. But what a selection they have. Most movie critics and film historians agree that in 1939, Hollywood produced more classic films than it did in any other year. Oz must compete for its audience against movies like these. Gone with the Wind sets box office records that will stand for decades. But The Wizard of Oz, MGM's costliest film to date, loses money in its first release. Yet there's still a chance for glory. Oscar night, February 29th, 1940. This evening, the rivalry is especially strong. Academy voters have been presented with a nearly impossible task: how to choose the winner when there are so many winners. Oz has garnered an unexpected 5 nominations, including Best Picture. But Gone with the Wind, boasting a total of 13 nominations, is the odds-on favorite. It would appear that David O. Selznick and Vivien Leigh are shoo-ins in their respective categories. Still, the Oscars have always been an evening of surprises, and the other nominees pray for a miracle. Master of Ceremonies Bob Hope sets the tone for the evening.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Really, I think this is a wonderful thing, a benefit like this for David Selznick, and I want to tell you...
No one is really surprised when Selznick's team dominates the ceremonies with an unprecedented 8 Academy Awards, including Best Director for Victor Fleming, who probably would have been nominated for Oz had he not also directed Gone with the Wind. Ironically, it's Fleming's other producer, Mervyn LeRoy, who presents his Oscar, but Oz is not altogether out of the running. Herbert Stothart wins for his brilliant musical scoring, and Harburg and Arlen win for their song, Over the Rainbow. As the evening winds down, the most requested song is Over the Rainbow, reminding both winners and losers that there are new dreams they can dare to dream. But not a soul in this room can possibly conceive what the future holds for the Wizard of Oz.
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
After its initial release, Oz would appear occasionally through several reissues and kiddie matinees. And then in 1956, along came television. For the first 2 decades, most viewers could only see it in black and white, which didn't stop the millions who had never seen it before from falling under its spell. You know, it's interesting how you can watch a bad movie, and once is enough. In the case of The Wizard of Oz, 100 times may not be enough.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me.
For the next 30 years, Judy Garland makes successful appearances all over the world, and memories of the Wizard of Oz are never far away. No performance would be complete without Garland singing Over the Rainbow. In a letter to Harold Arlen, Judy writes, "Over the Rainbow has become part of my life. It's so symbolic of everybody's dreams and wishes that I'm sure that's why some people get tears in their eyes when they hear it. I've sung it thousands of times, and it's still the song that's closest to my heart."
I think it's endured because of people's dreams and because of the possibilities and because that there may be some place over the rainbow, that everybody wants to find something better, and even if it's more colorful or more outrageous or scarier and everything, you end up wanting to go home. And then, you know, that's the best place you can be. After all of the things that you learn, no matter how beautiful everything else is, home is what matters.
Why, oh, why can't
Oz succeeded in spite of its chaotic creative process. The fate somehow uniting those who cared about the project, those who were more than capable at their jobs, those who were genuinely proud of their work. The film that we enjoy so much is the happy result of their collaborative efforts. So let's all say thank you to them, and keep these marvelous talents in mind the next time you and I watch the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Let's get out of here. Look, Emerald City is closer and prettier than ever.
You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark, you're out of the night. Step into the sun, step into the light. Keep straight ahead for the most glorious place on the face of the earth or the sky. Step step into the sun, step into the light, march up to the gate and bid it. Open, open. Hooray!